Let me start by saying this. I'm not a doctor or a psychologist. I haven't got a PhD in anything. I haven't gone to school to learn about any of these things. So why do I think that I'm qualified to talk to you today? Why is mental health and brain injury something that I am so passionate about? What do you see? Still a bit of hair on top. My chest has slipped a little further south. Skinny legs. I think I just described Mr. Potato Head. All joking aside, I look like a typical middle-aged person. Here's something else. I grew up near Toronto, the center of the universe. No barriers for me to break through, right? Let me introduce myself. My name is David Henry. I'm a trucker, a writer, husband, father, grandfather, and I'm a mental health survivor and brain injury survivor. Every day I'm here, I am beating the odds. The doctors said that the best scenario would be that I would be a vegetable. I guess they're kind of right because I do look like Mr. Potato Head. Daily, I deal with pain. Many nights are disturbed by nightmares, panic attacks, diminished mental capacity. Very hard to get up every day. I feel anything but privileged. In fact, because I look like a typical middle-aged person, it's easy for others to judge me harshly. I should not have survived several times. In fact, I've been told that I'm lucky to be alive. But there have been times, many, many times, where I felt like I was unlucky to be alive. I may have survived, but I felt like I am not surviving. And, like a lumpy potato, it is also fair to say that my journey has had its fair share of ups and downs along the way. As a young kid, I fell out of trees, was a passenger in a couple serious rear-end collisions, and played every sport I could to get me out of the classroom. Playing and being involved in sports was something very important to me. I never played to become the next great. I just loved being a competitor who was driven to be the best that I could be. Years of training and playing took me from an average jock to an average jock with lots of bumps and bruises. I loved rugby most of all. I could run fast and hit big guys all game long, so much that the coach moved me into the scrum because I played above my size. During a practice in my final year, I tackled the guy wrong, and I woke up looking at the sky through a circle of faces peering down at me. What happened? You just got your bell rung. Don't worry about it. Coach told me, but I did worry about it. I wanted to know what had happened. For some reason, coach wouldn't say. Just that it was no big deal. You get minor hits like this. So the guy, the coach, the guy I looked up to, our strategist, the person I trusted told me it was no big deal. So I believed him. Why wouldn't I? It was only a knock to the least damageable part of my body. A study done in Ontario has shown that 35% of those who committed suicide in their 20s had an unreported concussion as a teenager. We are learning more about the effects of these so-called minor head injuries. That was 1986. Let's fast forward to 1991. In 91, I was a farm manager helping out another farmer when I had half my face destroyed, as well as injuries to my neck and back. The damage was so severe that I was not operated on immediately. That is when I heard that the best case scenario was that I would be a vegetable. I was 23 years old, 2 children, and another on the way. I took those comments as a challenge. Even if I could have only one eye, I was going to see my next child being born. Eventually, they did plastic surgery on me, giving me a titanium cheekbone and a plastic eye socket. My older brother, naturally, he wondered why they hadn't given me Tom Cruise's face, since they'd gone to all that trouble. Gotta love big brothers. They keep us grounded. It was around this time that I also started to experience other mental health challenges. But these went untreated. The depression and anger mismanagement I was experiencing were considered minor issues. Here's a prejudice that I had. In high school, I was preoccupied with everything but doing my schoolwork. When you add on that I was never allowed to take anything in school except advanced level courses. How does that usually work out? Occasionally, I was at the top of the class. Normally, I was near the top. So if you had graphed my marks according to the time spent, I'd have a really good score. I never really considered myself very smart, but I did know I was okay. How could I be brain damaged or have mental issues when I was told I was still so smart? So to me, the neck and the back and the eye injuries were much, much more important. I took 8 months off work. I quit working as a farm manager. I went to work for a fertilizer company driving big equipment. Not the greatest idea for my injuries, but I was doing what I thought I needed to do. I needed to provide for my family. I thought I was being a man, being tough. After all, I'm an athlete. I can handle this, right? And while I was doing it, there was something wrong. Something really wrong. This time of my life was like a blur. Blur of work, kids, anger, frustration, a theory that I just needed to work harder. There was no acknowledgement from me that there was something wrong in my head. I looked fine, but I wasn't. Mental health issues are invisible until you blow up, sometimes resulting in suicide. After all, the doctors, the experts said that I was mentally fine. I could still play sports. I could do crazy math very easily in my head. And still my memory was better than most. It was all in my head. And the bumpy journey continued. In 2001, while sleeping in my truck in a truck stop in Tallahassee, Florida, another driver ran over my truck, resulting in another concussion. And while the medical treatment was quite an improvement this time around, every doctor concluded that I would never work full-time again, especially not as a truck driver. The mental health issues were too severe. The physical symptoms associated with brain injury were insurmountable. It was at this point that I began to understand what I was dealing with. I lucked into a psychiatrist who understood my issues and didn't downplay them. For the first time in my life, I took medication for mental health. I went to classes to learn how to cope. Some of the mental fog was cleared by the drugs. I wept when I realized how much I could have improved if I had been able to receive help in the 90s. It took almost 8 years before I could work full-time. True to my nature, I still pushed too hard. My bumpy ride continued in 2016. I fell off a truck from around 13 feet high onto the back of my head, resulting in injuries requiring another round of intensive rehab. My mental health issues and disabilities will likely always be with me, but I got through the rehab again despite the odds. The next workday, after rehab, I went to work, only to be told, "We don't want you anymore." It's devastating. No income, family to support. Not everyone understands mental health issues, and not everyone takes the time to understand or is empathetic. I think that's what happened to me. My employer got scared. But that has changed now. I've learned how to bounce back. Today I'm getting freed from my so-called limitations. Here is my rehab process in simplicity. It's called How to Survive to Drive. H, honesty with myself. I have a problem, not the others, It's easy to use mental illness as a crutch to explain bad behavior when it's convenient. You need a deep acknowledgement of the problem. There is nothing easy, flippant about this. You need to look at, when you look at yourself with true honesty, it is truly humbling. There is nothing glorious or fun about it because it strikes at the very deepest core of you as a person. It's humiliating, and it's also very liberating. Oh, open to listening. Now I need to listen. I need to listen to doctors, to my friends, to family, to my own body. There's many sources available today for learning about mental issues and brain injury. Scare your doctor by going in for an appointment and saying, so yeah, I Googled my symptoms and it appears that I have Chat. Or say to the doctor, I saw this ad on TV for this drug and I thought I should tell you about it. Seriously though, do research on your own. When you go back to the honesty angle, you look at things that work for you and only you. What works for one person may not work for another. There's many great ideas out there, and you need to sift through them for what works for you. W, time to put it to work. You've been honest with yourself about the problem. You've researched and gathered all the tools you need. Now is the time for action. Now it's time to put it all together and use it. And just because you want to feel better, it doesn't mean it will happen quickly. You want to become an engineer, so you go to school for years before you are qualified. A doctor takes years to become someone that can put the MD behind their name. You won't get it figured out just because you won't get it figured out the next day just because you've acknowledged the problem and want to change it. That's okay. You will get there. You will be better. Imagine going to a first-year student and mocking them for not knowing how to perform a task that requires a doctorate. Nobody thinks that's reasonable. Instead, you listen to them, help them, and praise them for their successes. That's what we want here. You help the person up who's having a bad day. You don't write them off because they haven't got it all figured out yet. After years of ignoring my problems and pretending that I didn't need help, I finally found how to survive, how to be free from my injuries, freedom to start enjoying life after 30 years of struggling to survive. I want people to find their freedom before 30 years have gone by. My injuries and bad luck led to serious mental health issues. There are many out here like me with their own complicated journey, but I'm sure that they've all had and will continue to have bumps along the way. I want to bring awareness and hope to this global problem. Now you may look at what I survived starting in '91 and say I was a success story already. My wife and I have been married for over 30 years. We have 8 wonderful children and 2 grandchildren. Outwardly, yes, there's been some success. Inwardly, the demons I was dealing with didn't make life very pleasant for those around me. The same drive that I had to get better, to improve, to be the best I could be, hurt coworkers and others around me. I was a tough guy. Why weren't others around me? I could take a knock and keep on ticking. Mentally, I thought I was a giant. Mental health issues are for wimps. I remind myself of my previous self whenever I encounter someone who thinks like I used to. I know I'm not alone in how I felt. And today, are we weaker because we're having these conversations? Hell no. The toughest thing I have ever done in my life is being honest with myself about my mental health issues. Real people do this. Real people have patience and understanding towards others. People who are blind to prejudices based on looks, social standing, or where you come from. Amazing people who listen carefully so they can help if something sounds a little off in a person. I believe that society is moving forward today. We're at the forefront of opening up new possibilities. Freedom isn't just a buzzword about removing walls or physical borders, because we're freeing people from within themselves. Be patient with others, with yourself. Just as it takes time to earn a degree, it takes time to understand and work on your own health. I will keep finding my freedom until I'm no longer here. Thank you for listening.